An invisible child before the rush of the world only wanted to bring bread home. But when everything seemed lost, someone who should never have been there changed everything with a single gesture. It was a Tuesday morning, like so many others in the Riverside Gardens neighborhood of Portland. The overcast sky painted the horizon in shades of gray, while the light drizzle that had fallen during the early hours still trickled down the sidewalks. The doors of the Fairmart supermarket opened promptly at 8 as usual. Uniformed employees went about their daily tasks. Customers were already forming short lines, and the ordinary flow of an ordinary morning began without fanfare, without surprises. At least that's what everyone thought. Across the street, a little girl watched the store's activity with attention. Her name was Lily. She was 9 years old and wore clothes 2 sizes too small, grimy and worn from time and continuous use. The backpack on her shoulders was almost empty, but preciously held a few coins she had managed to save in the last few days, selling candy at traffic lights around the city. Lily rubbed her hands together, trying to chase away the cold she felt in her fingers. Winter in Portland wasn't as harsh as in other regions of the country, but for someone without proper winter clothing, even a light drizzle could feel like an ice storm. "Today it's going to work," she whispered to herself. Like a mantra, she repeated every morning. The traffic light turned green, and she crossed the street walking toward the supermarket. Lily wasn't there by accident. For weeks, she had observed the movement of the place, noticing how employees treated people, which cashiers were faster, which ones seemed friendlier. For a 9-year-old child, she had a surprisingly keen sense of observation, a skill developed out of necessity for survival. At the Hope Renewed Community Shelter, her brother Tommy, only 5 years old, was probably still sleeping. Mrs. Jenkins, the 70-year-old woman who volunteered to coordinate the place, usually let the children rest a little longer on colder mornings. Lily had slipped out quietly, leaving a note scribbled with colored pencil. "Went to get breakfast. We'll be back soon. Please take care of Tommy." As she walked through the aisles of Fairmart, Lily tried to appear as natural as possible. She had learned that to be invisible, sometimes you needed to try to look normal. She picked up a small basket and went straight to the bakery section. The smell of fresh bread made her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten anything since dinner the night before, a thin soup served at the shelter, which had barely satisfied her hunger. 2 bread rolls. "Please," she asked, stretching to reach the counter. The attendant, a middle-aged woman named Claudia, looked down and saw Lily. For a moment, her face showed a mixture of surprise and compassion. "Good morning, little one. 2 rolls, then?" Lily nodded without saying anything more. She received the bread wrapped in a paper bag and headed to the dairy section. Her heart was beating fast as she walked. She knew exactly how much she had, $3.75 in coins. She had done the math several times during the night. The bread should cost $1, and the cheapest box of milk, $50. She would even have $0.25 left over, which she planned to save for the next day. In the dairy section, Lily stood on her tiptoes to reach the lowest shelf, where the cheapest milk was kept. She picked up a small carton and carefully placed it in her basket, along with the bread. Before heading to the checkout, she passed by the candy section. Her eyes lit up when she saw the chocolate bars, but she quickly looked away. There was no room for wishes that morning. The line at checkout counter 2 was relatively short. 3 people in front of Lily seemed absorbed in their phones or in the mechanical act of placing their purchases on the conveyor belt. No one noticed the girl who waited patiently, counting and recounting the coins in her small hand, calloused from premature work. "Next," called the cashier, a young woman named Jenna as indicated by her name tag. Lily approached and placed the items on the conveyor belt. Her hands trembled slightly. "Is that all, sweetie?" asked Jenna, scanning the products. "Yes, ma'am," replied Lily politely. "That's $4.35, Jenna informed her after ringing up the products. Lily's heart stopped for a moment. It couldn't be. She had calculated $3.50, she was sure of it. Something must have increased in price since the last time she checked. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "Yes, honey. The bread rolls are 1.20 each, that's 2.40, and the milk is 1.95. Total, 4.35. Lily felt her face burn with shame. She opened her hand and showed the coins she had. "I only have $3.75, she confessed. Behind her, an impatient sigh was heard. Someone muttered something like, "Why don't you count your money before?" Lily wanted to disappear. Can I return one of the bread rolls?" she suggested, already extending her hand to take back one of the rolls. Jenna looked at the supervisor, Marlene, who was watching from a distance. With a subtle gesture, the supervisor indicated not to get too involved. These were company guidelines. Compassion, yes, but within the limits of protocol. "Of course, honey. I'll cancel one of the bread rolls," said Jenna, typing something into the terminal. It was at that moment that a coin slipped from Lily's hand and rolled across the floor, stopping near the foot of a middle-aged man who was in the next line. He looked at the coin, then at the girl, and looked away with indifference. Lily bent down, picked up the coin, and continued waiting as Jenna recalculated. "It's still 3.15s. You only have 2.75 now," explained the cashier, noticing that Lily had lost a $1 coin in that small accident. Lily's eyes welled up, but she swallowed the tears. She had learned early on that crying in public only made things worse. Then, "Can I just take the milk?" Before Jenna could respond, another voice was heard. "Please include that cereal bar too, and I'll pay the difference." Lily turned around, surprised. A man of ordinary appearance, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, placed a cereal bar on the conveyor belt and smiled gently at her. There was something different in his gaze. It wasn't pity, as Lily was used to seeing, but a kind of deep understanding. Jenna looked confused for a moment, but added the new item to the order. "That's $7.85 in total," she informed. The man took out his wallet and pulled out a $10 bill. "Keep the change," he said, smiling at the cashier. Lily stood frozen, not knowing how to react. She wasn't used to receiving help from strangers without something being asked in return. "Thank you, sir," she finally murmured. The man leaned down slightly. "My name is Henry, and you don't need to thank me." If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. Henry Walters wasn't there by accident. At 47, as CEO of the Fairmart chain, he followed a tradition started by his father, August Walters, the company's founder, visiting branches anonymously to experience firsthand the real experience of customers and employees. "See with your own eyes," August used to say. "Reports are important, but they don't capture the look of a dissatisfied customer or the sincere smile of a dedicated employee." That morning, Henry had chosen the Riverside Gardens branch because it was one of the newest in the chain, having opened only 6 months earlier. The neighborhood, known for its lower middle-class population and the presence of some pockets of social vulnerability, represented both a challenge and an opportunity for the company. Henry believed that true success wasn't measured just by profits, but by the positive impact they could generate in the communities where they operated. As he walked through the aisles, pretending to be a regular customer, he observed everything with trained eyes: the cleanliness of the floor, the organization of the shelves, the friendliness of the employees, the satisfaction of the customers. He mentally noted every detail, every flaw, every success. The visit was going as expected until his eyes fell on little Lily standing in line at checkout counter 2. Something in the girl's posture caught his attention. It wasn't just her worn clothes or poorly combed hair, but a silent dignity that emanated from her, as if she carried on her shoulders a weight much greater than any child should bear. Henry approached discreetly, choosing the line next to hers to observe better. That's when he witnessed the scene. Lily counting coins, the cashier's expression, the impatient whisper of customers behind her, the coin that rolled to his foot, the request to return a bread roll. All of this awakened in Henry memories of his own childhood, not because he had experienced similar situations, but because he had been taught by his father to always look beyond appearances. August Walters had built the Fairmart empire from scratch. The son of German immigrants, he had started with a small grocery store in upstate New York in the 1960s. The story August liked to tell most, and which Henry had heard hundreds of times, was about how his first customer had been an elderly woman who paid for a loaf of bread with coins counted one by one. That bread, Henry, August would say, wasn't just food, it was dignity. And I never forgot that. Now, witnessing that scene at checkout counter 2, Henry felt as if his father were beside him, whispering in his ear, "Make a difference, son. Don't look away." After paying for Lily's items, Henry noticed how the girl held the bag carefully as if carrying a treasure. Perhaps for her that's exactly what it was. "What's your name?" he asked, accompanying her to the exit. "Lily, sir," she replied, still wary. "Lily, pretty name. It suits you." The girl looked down, not knowing how to respond to the compliment. "Do you come here often?" Henry continued. "Sometimes when I can save up money," she explained. "My brother likes bread with milk in the morning." "Your brother? How old is he?" 5. "His name is Tommy." Henry felt a tightness in his chest. A 9-year-old child taking care of a 5-year-old brother, counting coins to buy breakfast. The contrast with his own reality was stark. "And your parents?" he asked, trying not to sound invasive. Lily hesitated for a moment, as if weighing how much she could trust this stranger. "They left," she finally answered. "We live at the Hope Renewed shelter. Mrs. Jenkins takes care of us, but there are many of us there." Henry nodded, understanding the situation. He knew the Hope Renewed shelter by name, as Fairmart occasionally donated food close to expiration dates to charity institutions in the region. But he had never visited the place personally, had never seen the faces of the children who might depend on these donations to survive. At that moment, an idea began to form in his mind. It wasn't just about helping Lily and her brother, but about creating a broader, more lasting impact. "Lily, I need to sort something out here at the store. Can you wait for me a minute?" The girl seemed apprehensive. "I have to get back to the shelter, sir. Tommy is waiting for breakfast." "It will be quick, I promise, and afterward, if you want, I can give you a ride there." Lily pondered for a moment, and then nodded. Henry smiled and walked back into the store, directly toward the customer service desk. The attendant, Roberta, widened her eyes when she saw that ordinary man approach with a determined expression. "Good morning. I need to speak with the manager, please," Henry requested. "May I know what this is about, sir?" asked Roberta, following protocol. Henry took from his pocket the badge he had kept hidden and placed it on the counter. The name Henry Walters, Chief Executive Officer, was printed in gold letters, along with the company logo. Roberta's face instantly turned pale. "Mr. Walters, I didn't know. I'll call the manager immediately." In less than a minute, Claude Sanders, the store manager, appeared breathless, adjusting his tie and with a poorly disguised expression of panic. "Mr. Walters, what a surprise! We weren't informed of your visit." "That's the idea of an unannounced visit, Claude," replied Henry with a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, I'm not here to inspect. Actually, I need your help." The manager seemed to relax a bit, but still maintained a tense posture. "Anything, sir. We're at your disposal." Henry discreetly pointed to Lily, who was waiting near the exit. "See that girl? She came to buy bread and milk for her younger brother. She lives in a shelter. She didn't have enough money." Claude looked in the indicated direction and nodded, not understanding where Henry was going with this. "What do you think would happen if she came back here tomorrow, or another child in a similar situation?" "Well," the manager hesitated, "we would follow protocol. If there isn't enough money, we can't approve the purchase without higher authorization." "And who is your immediate superior?" "The regional director, Mr. Marcus Riley, and his superior." "The vice president of operations, Mrs. Felicia Lynn. And above her?" Claude swallowed hard. "You, Mr. Walters." Henry smiled. "Exactly. And I am authorizing from now on that any child in a vulnerable situation who enters this store has free access to bread and milk. It's not charity, Claude. It's social responsibility." The manager blinked a few times, processing the information. "Sir, with all due respect, this could set a precedent. How would we identify who really needs it, and the financial impact?" "The financial impact of providing bread and milk to needy children is minimal compared to the waste we have daily," interrupted Henry. "As for recognizing who needs it, I trust the judgment of our employees. They know the community better than we do." Henry picked up the microphone from the customer service desk and, before Claude could protest, activated it. The sound of feedback briefly echoed throughout the store, drawing everyone's attention. "Good morning, Fairmart customers and employees," he began with a clear and firm voice. "My name is Henry Walters, CEO of this supermarket chain. I would like to make an important announcement. An absolute silence took over the environment. Employees stopped what they were doing. Customers interrupted their shopping. All eyes turned to the ordinary man who, seconds before, had gone unnoticed among the aisles. Starting today, in all Fairmart stores, we will implement a permanent policy. Every child in a vulnerable situation who enters any of our stores will have free access to bread and milk daily. Murmurs began to spread throughout the environment. Some customers exchanged surprised looks, others smiled in approval. It's not charity, continued Henry. It's our responsibility as a company that serves the community. It's our duty to see beyond profit, beyond numbers. It's our commitment to the future of this country. As he finished the announcement, Henry returned the microphone to Roberta, who looked at him with a mixture of admiration and astonishment. Prepare an official communication for all stores, he instructed Claude, and organize a meeting with the marketing and social responsibility departments to implement this properly. I want it to be more than a gesture. I want it to be a real change in these children's lives. The manager nodded, still processing the impact of that sudden decision. Yes, sir, it will be done immediately. Henry turned to leave and noticed that several people had taken out their phones. Some were filming, others taking pictures. In a matter of minutes, he knew that moment would be on social media. It wasn't what he had planned when he woke up that morning, but now it seemed inevitable, and perhaps it was better that way. Lily was still waiting near the exit, holding her bag with the 2 bread rolls, the milk and the cereal bar. Her eyes were wide, not fully understanding what had just happened. "Ready to go home?" asked Henry, approaching with a gentle smile. Lily nodded, still in silence. "Then let's go. I think your brother is waiting for breakfast." As they left through the main door, a woman approached Lily and held out a $50 bill. "Please accept it," she said, visibly moved. "Use it to buy something for you and your brother." Lily looked at Henry as if asking for permission. He nodded discreetly. "Thank you, ma'am," murmured Lily, carefully putting the bill in her pocket. Another customer approached Henry. "What you did was incredible. You could create a fund to help more children like her." Henry smiled. "That's an excellent idea. We'll work on that." As they walked toward the parking lot, Henry felt that something bigger than himself had been set in motion on that ordinary morning, which had suddenly become extraordinary. The Hope Renewed Shelter was only 15 minutes from the supermarket, but for Lily, the journey in Henry's luxury car seemed like a trip to another world. Sitting in the back seat, with the seatbelt adjusted, she watched the familiar streets gain a new perspective through the tinted windows. Her small hands firmly held the bag with the groceries, as if she feared that it all might disappear at any moment. "It's here," she said finally, pointing to a simple 2-story building with peeling walls and a small, poorly maintained garden in front. Henry parked the car and observed the place. A hand-painted wooden sign identified the shelter. Some windows had clothes hanging on the ledge, and outside worn toys were scattered across the small yard. "Are you coming?" asked Lily, already unfastening her seatbelt. Henry hesitated for a moment. He hadn't planned to go beyond giving her a ride, but something in the girl's hopeful expression made him change his mind. "Yes, I'll meet Tommy and Mrs. Jenkins if that's no problem." Lily gave a genuine smile for the first time that morning. "Tommy will be super happy. He hardly ever sees men around here, only Mr. Arnold who comes to fix things now and then." They got out of the car and walked to the entrance of the shelter. There was no doorbell, just a worn door that Lily pushed without ceremony. "Mrs. Jenkins, I'm back," she announced, entering the narrow corridor that led to a community room. An elderly woman with grey hair and a face marked by time emerged from a side door, drying her hands on a floral apron. Her eyes, framed by deep wrinkles, showed a mixture of relief and curiosity when she saw Lily accompanied by a stranger. "Lily, my child, I was worried. You know you shouldn't leave without telling me, especially so early." "I left a note, Mrs. Jenkins," Lily defended herself, "and I brought bread and milk for Tommy." The old woman then turned her attention to Henry, analyzing him with the cautious look of someone who had seen many unfulfilled promises in life. "And who are you, sir?" she asked, positioning herself protectively between Lily and the visitor. "Henry Walters. he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I met Lily today at the supermarket and offered her a ride here." Mrs. Jenkins shook Henry's hand with surprising firmness for someone her age, still silently evaluating him. "He paid for the bread and milk, Mrs. Jenkins," explained Lily, excited, "and gave a cereal bar too. And then he spoke on the store microphone that all children like me and Tommy can get free bread and milk." Mrs. Jenkins' expression changed from distrust to confusion. "What do you mean, spoke on the microphone?" Before Lily could elaborate on her explanation, a child's voice echoed down the corridor. "Lily, you're back." A small boy with tousled hair and eyes identical to Lily's came running toward her. He was wearing faded pajamas and different socks on each foot. His face lit up when he saw the bag in his sister's hands. "Did you bring bread?" he asked hopefully. Lily bent down to be at her brother's height and smiled. "Yes, and milk too. And look what else is in here," she said, taking the cereal bar out of the bag. "We'll split it for breakfast." Tommy's eyes shone as if he had just received the greatest gift in the world. It was then that he noticed Henry's presence. "Who is he?" he asked, partially hiding behind his sister. "This is Mr. Henry," Lily introduced. "He's the one who helped me buy our breakfast." Tommy looked at Henry with childlike curiosity. "Thank you for the bread." "Sir?" he said with the simplicity and sincerity that only children can express. Henry felt a lump in his throat. In his world of corporate meetings, numbers, and market strategies, he rarely encountered such genuine gratitude for something as simple as a bread roll. "You're welcome." "Tommy," he replied, crouching to be at the boy's level, "it's a pleasure to meet you and your sister." At that moment, other children began to appear, attracted by the novelty of a visitor. There were about 10 of them, of different ages, all with curious looks and simple clothes. Some clearly donated or passed down from one child to another. "Children, go take your baths and get ready for breakfast," instructed Mrs. Jenkins, trying to maintain order. "Lily, take your brother and help him get dressed. I want to have a conversation with Mr. Henry." Lily nodded, taking Tommy by the hand and walking toward the stairs that led to the second floor. Before going up, she turned. "You'll wait, right?" "Yes, I will," assured Henry. "I have a few things to discuss with Mrs. Jenkins." Satisfied with the response, Lily went up the stairs with her brother, talking animatedly about the morning's events. Mrs. Jenkins led Henry to a small room that served as an office. A simple wooden desk, some mismatched chairs, and shelves with meticulously organized folders made up the environment. "Please, sit down," she indicated, settling on the other side of the desk. "Now tell me exactly what happened." "Lily has a vivid imagination, you know. Sometimes she mixes reality with fantasy." Henry smiled. This time, "I'm afraid she's being quite accurate." In the following minutes, he related the events at the supermarket. Mrs. Jenkins' expression oscillated between disbelief and emotion as the story unfolded. "So you're really the owner of the Fairmart chain?" she asked when Henry finished his account. "CEO," he gently corrected. "The company belongs to the shareholders, but yes, I'm responsible for the main decisions." Mrs. Jenkins shook her head, as if trying to assimilate the magnitude of the coincidence. "And you really announced that all children in vulnerable situations will have free access to bread and milk?" "Yes, and I intend to implement this in all our stores by the end of the week." The old woman rested her elbows on the desk and covered her face with her hands for a moment. When she lowered them, her eyes were teary. "You have no idea what this means. We have 23 children here currently. The budget barely covers basic expenses. Sometimes I have to choose between buying bread or fruit, between milk or school supplies." Henry felt a weight in his chest. As a businessman, he was used to dealing with grand numbers, million-dollar budgets, complex strategies. But there, in that simple room, he realized that decisions that seemed small to him could have an immense impact on the real lives of real people. "Mrs. Jenkins, I want to know more about your work here. Perhaps we can establish a broader partnership beyond the bread and milk issue." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a notification on Henry's phone. He excused himself and checked the screen. It was a message from Marianne, his executive assistant. "Henry, you need to see this. Your video at Fairmart is going viral. It already has more than 100,000 views, and the press is trying to contact us." Attached to the message was a link to a video on Instagram. The title said, American CEO does the unexpected for an invisible child. The images, recorded by a customer, showed the exact moment when Henry announced the new policy over the store's microphone. "Did something happen?" asked Mrs. Jenkins, noticing the change in Henry's expression. "It seems someone filmed the announcement I made in the store and posted it on social media." "It's..." Having quite a response, Mrs. Jenkins adjusted her glasses on her face. "Is that good or bad?" Henry reflected for a moment. "Honestly, I don't know. I didn't do it for publicity, but if the exposure helps to amplify the impact of the initiative, maybe it's positive." At that instant, Henry's phone began to ring. It was Felicia Lynn, the Vice President of Operations at Fairmart. "I need to answer this," he said, standing up. "Excuse me." Henry went out to the small garden in front of the shelter and answered the call. "Henry, for God's sake, what happened?" Felicia shot without preamble. "We're being bombarded with calls. Journalists, other business people, NGOs, everyone wanting to confirm if what you announced is true." "It's true, Felicia," he confirmed calmly. "And I want us to implement this as quickly as possible. Organize an emergency meeting with the board for this afternoon. I'll need everyone's support. Do you have any idea of the precedent you're setting? The financial impact? The logistics required?" "I do, and I'm willing to take responsibility. Believe me, I saw something today that changed my perspective on many things." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Are you okay, Henry?" "It's not like you to make such emotional decisions." Henry looked at the shelter window, where he could see Lily and Tommy sitting at the kitchen table, sharing the bread and milk he had helped purchase. "Never been better, Felicia. Sometimes we need to step out of our comfort zone to see what really matters." After hanging up, Henry received another notification. The video now exceeded 250,000 views, and hashtags like #heroic CEO and #Fairmart Humanity were among the most commented topics on social media. When he returned to the office, he found Mrs. Jenkins working on an old desktop computer. "Your video is everywhere. Mr. Henry," she said, pointing to the screen that showed a news report about the incident. "People are commenting, sharing. Some other business people are already announcing they'll follow your example." Henry approached to see the article. The headline was, "Businessman Turns Simple Gesture into Movement of Solidarity." Below, there was a photo of him captured at the moment of the announcement, and beside it, an image of Lily from behind, with her grocery bag. "This happened less than 2 hours ago," he murmured, impressed with the speed of the repercussion. "The digital world is like that," commented Mrs. Jenkins. "For better or worse, things spread in the blink of an eye." At that moment, Lily and Tommy entered the office. The boy was now dressed and combed, although his clothes were also visibly larger than his size. "Mrs. Jenkins, can I show my drawings to Mr. Henry?" asked Tommy, holding a worn plastic folder. "If Mr. Henry has time," replied the old woman, looking at the visitor with an expression that mixed gratitude and concern. "Of course I do," affirmed Henry, sitting on the worn couch in the room. "Show me your drawings, Tommy." As the boy proudly spread his artistic works on the coffee table, Henry received another message. It was from the chairman of the board of directors of Fairmart. "We need to talk urgently about your unauthorized announcement." Henry put the phone back in his pocket without responding. That moment, there with Tommy and his colorful drawings, seemed infinitely more important than any board meeting or media repercussion. "This one is you," said Tommy, pointing to a scribble that vaguely resembled a human figure next to a rectangle that probably represented the supermarket. "I made it just now while having breakfast." Henry felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time. There, amidst childish drawings and worn furniture, something inside him was changing, and he knew there was no going back. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. 2 weeks had passed since that Tuesday that transformed both Lily's and Henry's lives. What had begun as a simple gesture at a supermarket checkout had now turned into a movement gaining national proportions. At the Fairmart headquarters, located in an imposing building in downtown Seattle's business district, the main conference room was packed. Executives from all departments, external consultants, and media representatives were waiting for the press conference that Henry had called to officially announce the bread and milk program. As the initiative had been named, "Are you sure about this?" asked Felicia Lynn, nervously adjusting her blazer as she walked alongside Henry down the corridor leading to the room. "The board is still divided. Some shareholders fear the impact on quarterly profits." Henry smiled with tranquility, something that had become more frequent in recent weeks. "Felicia, we've already shown with numbers that the financial impact is minimal, and the return in terms of corporate image and customer loyalty is already exceeding any marketing investment we could have made." "It's not just that," she insisted. "Some people are questioning whether this isn't just a publicity stunt, if we're really going to maintain the program long term." "That's why I'm formalizing everything today," he replied, stopping before entering the room. "I want to make it clear that this isn't a temporary action or a marketing strategy. It's a paradigm shift in how we do business." As they entered the room, all conversations ceased. Camera flashes fired, capturing the image of Henry Walters, who in just 2 weeks had gone from a discreet CEO to a kind of symbol of corporate social responsibility. "Good morning, everyone," he greeted, positioning himself at the front of the table. "Thank you all for your presence at this important moment for Fairmart." While Henry began his speech on the other side of the city, in Riverside Gardens, Lily was also experiencing transformations. The Hope Renewed shelter had never received so much attention. Donations of clothes, food, toys, and school supplies arrived daily. Volunteers appeared offering everything from tutoring to free medical consultations. "Lily, someone wants to talk to you," called Mrs. Jenkins, entering the small room that the girl now shared with only 3 other girls, instead of the previous 8. The shelter had undergone emergency renovations, thanks to donations from local business owners inspired by the story. Walls were painted, bathrooms renovated, new mattresses acquired. It was still a simple place, but now it possessed the dignity it had always deserved. "Who is it, Mrs. Jenkins?" asked Lily, getting up from the bed where she was reading a new book, a gift from a publishing house that had been moved by her story. "It's the lady from the Starlight Path NGO. She wants to talk about that educational program I mentioned to you." Lily straightened her dress, also new, a gift from a department store, and followed Mrs. Jenkins to the living room. There, a young woman of approximately 30 was waiting with a welcoming smile. "Hello, Lily. My name is Danielle Carter from Starlight Path. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Lily extended her hand timidly. She still wasn't used to all this attention. "Hi, ma'am." "You can call me Danny," smiled the visitor. "I'm here to talk about a special opportunity for you and your brother." Meanwhile, at the Fairmart headquarters, Henry was concluding his speech. "And therefore, today we're not only formalizing the bread and milk program, but also the creation of the Fairmart Foundation for the future, with an initial contribution of $10 million dedicated exclusively to supporting children in socially vulnerable situations throughout the United States." Enthusiastic applause filled the room. Journalists raised their hands, eager to ask questions. "Mr. Walters," called a reporter from CNN, "what motivated such a radical change in company policy? Was it really just the encounter with the girl, Lily, or were there previous plans?" Henry reflected for a moment before answering. "You know, sometimes in life we have the opportunity to see beyond appearances, beyond numbers, beyond corporate strategies. Lily wasn't the cause of the change, but the catalyst that made me realize something that had always been there. The responsibility we have as a company and as human beings." Another hand was raised. "Business. Week would like to know, how do you respond to critics who say this is just a marketing strategy disguised as social action?" Henry's expression became more serious. "We've invited independent auditors to monitor every step of the program and Foundation's implementation. We'll publish detailed quarterly reports on the social impact and number of beneficiaries. And most importantly, we're amending our corporate bylaws to include these initiatives as a permanent part of our mission, regardless of who's in the company's presidency in the future." Back at the shelter, Danielle was explaining the educational program to Lily. "It's a project that offers specialized school support for children in vulnerable situations. It includes teaching materials, uniforms, transportation, and most importantly, a personalized educational plan that respects the pace and specific needs of each child." Lily's eyes sparkled as she listened. "Can Tommy participate too?" Of course. Actually, we want to offer spots for all the children at the shelter. Mrs. Jenkins, who was observing the conversation, couldn't contain her emotion. In 20 years of running this shelter, I've never seen anything like it. It's as if suddenly all these children had become visible. Danielle nodded. That's exactly it, Mrs. Jenkins. Often these children were always there, but no one really looked at them. Now, thanks to Lily's story and Mr. Walter's attitude, many people are beginning to see beyond their social bubbles. At the press conference, Henry was answering the final question. To conclude, Mr. Walters, there are rumors that you're considering leaving the presidency of Fairmart to dedicate yourself exclusively to the new foundation. Is this true? An expectant silence took over the room. Felicia Lynn, seated near the table, seemed especially tense. I have no plans to leave the presidency at the moment, replied Henry with a serene smile. I believe I can do more for children by maintaining my current position and using the company's influence to promote significant changes. However, I am reorganizing my priorities to dedicate at least 30% of my time to the Foundation's activities. At the end of the press conference, as the journalists dispersed and the executives conversed in small groups, Marianne, Henry's assistant, approached with an envelope in hand. Another letter arrived for you, she said, handing him the yellowed paper envelope. No return address like the others. Henry took the envelope with curiosity. In the last 2 weeks, he had received hundreds of messages, emails, letters, social media messages from people moved by the story. Some offered help. Others shared their own experiences. Many simply expressed gratitude. But among all these messages, some handwritten letters, always on yellowed paper and without a return address, had caught his special attention. They were brief, profound, and seemed to come from the same person, although they were never signed. Thank you, Marianne, he said, putting the envelope in his jacket's inner pocket. I'll read it later. Meanwhile, at the shelter, after Danielle's departure, Lily found Tommy in the small yard, playing with a new toy car he had received from one of the volunteers. Tommy, I have amazing news, she exclaimed, sitting next to her brother. We are going to a special school, with new materials, uniforms, everything. The boy looked at his sister with wide eyes. We're going together. You won't leave me alone. Lily hugged her brother tightly. Never. Tommy, I promise I'll never leave you alone. That same afternoon, Henry finally found a moment of tranquility in his office to open the mysterious envelope. Inside, as before, there was only a small piece of paper with a handwritten message. You don't know me, but my son saw Lily's video. He decided to come back home. Thank you for reminding us that humanity still exists. There was no signature, no further explanations. Just those simple words that somehow touched Henry more deeply than all the newspaper headlines and television reports. He read the message several times, wondering who this person might be. What story might lie behind those words? A son who had run away from home? A broken family that had found a chance to start over? There was no way to know. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Richard Mitchell, director of one of the country's main investment funds and a board member of Fairmart. Henry, I saw your press conference. Impressive what you're doing, said Richard without preamble. But I need to be frank. Some investors are concerned. They think you're letting yourself be carried away too much by the emotional side. Henry took a deep breath before responding. Richard, for years we've evaluated success only by numbers, graphs and projections, and that has brought us this far, it's true. But now I'm seeing something bigger, something that financial reports don't capture, the real impact on people's lives. I understand your point. But let me finish, interrupted Henry, with unusual firmness in his voice. In the last 2 weeks, Fairmart shares have appreciated by 12%. Our stores have registered an 18% increase in customer flow. We've received more than 30 proposals for strategic partnerships, not to mention the savings in marketing we've made. Since the spontaneous media has given us visibility, we could never achieve with paid advertising. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Do you really believe this is sustainable in the long term? Questioned Richard, still skeptical. I believe we're redefining what sustainable means in the corporate world, replied Henry, and I invite you and all other board members to visit the Hope Renewed shelter with me next week. Maybe then you can understand what numbers alone can't explain. After hanging up, Henry remained for a few minutes contemplating the view of the city through the panoramic window of his office. Seattle stretched as far as the eye could see, imposing, chaotic, full of contrasts. Somewhere down there, between skyscrapers and slums, between luxury and misery, stories like Lily's unfolded every day. Most of these stories remained invisible, as Lily had been in that line. At checkout counter 2, people who exist in statistics, but rarely in glances, in public policies, in corporate decisions. His cell phone vibrated with a notification. It was a message from Mrs. Jenkins with an attached photo. Lily and Tommy smiling, holding their new school supplies, ready for their first day in the educational program. Below the photo, a simple message: "Thank you for seeing them." Henry smiled, feeling a certainty he had rarely experienced in his career. He was finally on the right path. A month had passed. Spring was beginning to show its first signs in Portland, with flowering dogwoods dotting the urban landscape. At the Hope Renewed shelter, the small garden once neglected now displayed colorful flower beds, the result of volunteer work by a group of landscapers who had offered to transform the space. Lily observed the flowers through the window of the study room, a new environment created after the shelter's renovation, equipped with tables, comfortable chairs, and a small library. In her hands, a science book that she leafed through with genuine interest. In the last 30 days, her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined. "Lily, have you seen Tommy?" asked Mrs. Jenkins, entering the room with an envelope in her hands. "He's in the yard, helping plant new seedlings with the NGO people," she replied, closing the book. "Did something happen?" Mrs. Jenkins smiled, extending the envelope to the girl. "The mailman just delivered it. It's for you and Tommy." Lily took the envelope with curiosity. It was the first time she had received mail. Her name and her brother's were printed on the front, along with the shelter's address. "Can I open it now?" she asked, already sliding her finger along the envelope's flap. "Of course, dear. Do you want me to call Tommy?" "No need, I'll show him later." Mrs. Jenkins nodded and left the room, leaving Lily alone with her curiosity. The girl opened the envelope carefully and removed a colorful card from inside. On the cover, there was the Fairmart Foundation for the Future logo and the words, "Special Invitation." Upon opening the card, Lily found a text printed in golden letters. "Lily and Tommy, we would like to invite you to the official inauguration ceremony of the Fairmart Foundation for the Future headquarters, which will take place next Saturday at 10 a.m. As special guests, you will participate in the ribbon cutting alongside Mr. Henry Walters. A car will be at the shelter at 9 a.m. to pick you up. Sincerely, Fairmart Foundation for the Future team." Below the printed text, there was a small handwritten note: "Lily and Tommy, it would be an honor to have you by my side at this very special moment. I miss you, Henry." Lily's eyes sparkled. She hadn't seen Henry in person since that first day, although he had maintained regular contact with the shelter, monitoring the progress of the improvements and occasionally sending gifts to the children. He had appeared in some newspapers and television programs talking about the foundation, but always in a discreet manner, avoiding turning the story into a media spectacle centered on himself. "Mrs. Jenkins," called Lily, running to the door with the invitation in her hands. "We're going to the inauguration of Mr. Henry's foundation." Meanwhile, in Seattle's business district, Henry was participating in a meeting with the team responsible for the final preparations for the inauguration of the foundation's headquarters. "The space is practically ready," Marianne informed, showing photos on a tablet. "The furniture was delivered yesterday. The technology team is finalizing the installation of the equipment, and the photographic exhibition is already being set up." Henry nodded, satisfied. The foundation's headquarters occupied an entire floor of a commercial building in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, strategically located to facilitate access for NGOs and partner entities. The space had been designed to be welcoming and functional, far from the corporate coldness typical of traditional offices. "Have all the invitations been sent?" he asked. "Yes, all of them, including the special ones for Lily, Tommy, and Mrs. Jenkins," confirmed Marianne. "We've also reserved prominent places for them at the ceremony as you requested." Henry smiled, imagining the children's reaction upon receiving the invitation. Amid so many changes in his professional life, meetings, interviews, negotiations, new projects, It was the small moments involving Lily and Tommy that brought the feeling that it was all worthwhile. "Oh, and another letter arrived," added Marianne, taking a yellowed paper envelope from her folder. Like the others, Henry's expression subtly changed. Those mysterious letters without a return address continued to arrive, always with brief and impactful messages. There were already 5 in total, and each one seemed to contain a fragment of a larger story that he couldn't completely decipher. "Thank you, Marianne," he said, taking the envelope. "Any progress in identifying the sender?" His assistant shook her head negatively. "Nothing yet. There's no postmark, which suggests they were hand-delivered to reception. But no one remembers who brought them." Henry put the envelope in his pocket, deciding to read it later in private, as he always did. "Anything else we need to discuss today?" he asked, checking his watch. "Just a reminder. The meeting with the board has been moved up to tomorrow at 2 p.m. Richard Mitchell insisted on the change." Henry frowned. Richard, as the representative of the main investors, had become a constant presence in his schedule in recent weeks. Although publicly supporting Fairmart's social initiatives, behind the scenes, he frequently questioned the allocation of resources and the attention Henry dedicated to the foundation. "All right. I'll be there," he confirmed, ending the meeting. When alone in his office, Henry finally opened the mysterious envelope. Inside, as expected, there was only a small piece of paper with a handwritten message. "Each night I look out the window and see the stars. For a long time I believed that some simply no longer shone. Now I understand that I just wasn't looking in the right direction. My son asks about you. Perhaps one day we can thank you in person." Henry read the message several times, trying to connect it to the previous ones. They all seemed to come from the same person. The handwriting was identical, as was the yellowed paper. They all referenced a son who, apparently, had returned home after seeing Henry's viral video at the supermarket. But who could this person be? And why such enigmatic communication? Storing the letter with the others in a special drawer of his desk, Henry decided it was time to find out. He called Marianne on the intercom. "Please ask the security team to review the reception camera footage from the days these letters were delivered. I want to know who brought them." A few hours later, at the end of the workday, Marianne returned with the requested information. "The security team identified the person," she said, placing a folder on the desk. "It's a woman, apparently in her 40s. She always comes at different times, delivers the envelope at reception and leaves quickly." Henry opened the folder and found images captured by the security cameras. The quality wasn't the best, but it allowed identification of a woman of medium height, dark hair tied in a bun, wearing simple and discreet clothes. Did they get any additional information? Name, address? No, sir. She never identifies herself, just leaves the envelope and leaves. But there's something interesting. On her last visit, she arrived in a taxi from the Blue Star Company. Henry looked up from the folder, intrigued. "Can we check with the company?" "We've already done that," replied Marianne, efficient as always. The driver remembered her. He said he picked her up at a cafe in the Queen Anne neighborhood and dropped her off on a residential street in Ballard. He noted the exact address because of the receipt. A discreet smile formed on Henry's lips. "Excellent work, Marianne." "Thank you." When his assistant left, Henry remained thoughtful, looking at the address noted on a post-it note. Part of him wanted to go there immediately, unravel the mystery that had intrigued him for weeks. Another part, however, questioned whether he should respect the apparent desire for anonymity from the sender of the letters. His cell phone rang, interrupting his reflections. It was Claude Sanders, the manager of the Riverside Gardens Fairmart store where it had all begun. "Mr. Walters, sorry to bother you outside business hours," began Claude, sounding enthusiastic, "but I thought you'd like to know. In 1 month of the bread and milk program just at our store, we've already served more than 200 different children." Henry felt a wave of satisfaction. "That's incredible, Claude. How is the operation working? Any problems?" "Surprisingly well, sir. At the beginning, we had some difficulties identifying who really needed it, but little by little we developed a system. And you know what's most interesting? Many customers have started contributing voluntarily to the program. They leave amounts at the checkout specifically to help fund the donations." "Really?" asked Henry, genuinely surprised. "Yes. We've already raised almost $3,000 in spontaneous donations. And it's not just money. Some people have started bringing clothes, school supplies. One lady even offered free tutoring classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. After hours. Henry felt an emotion that had become familiar in recent weeks, the sensation of witnessing human kindness emerge in response to a simple initial gesture. That's extraordinary, Claude. Truly extraordinary. After hanging up, Henry made a decision. He took the post-it with the address, put it in his wallet and left the office. Driving his own car without a driver, he headed to the Ballard neighborhood. The indicated address corresponded to a simple house on a quiet street. Lights on indicated that someone was home. Henry parked across the street and spent a few minutes observing, questioning whether he wasn't committing an invasion of privacy. Finally, gathering courage, he got out of the car and walked to the gate. He rang the doorbell and waited, feeling an inexplicable apprehension. The door opened and a woman appeared, the same one from the security camera images. Up close, Henry could see that she had tired but kind eyes and a serene countenance despite the evident surprise at recognizing him. "Mr. Walters?" she asked in an almost inaudible tone. "Yes," he confirmed. "Sorry to appear like this without warning. I received your letters." The woman stood motionless for a few seconds as if processing the information. Then, unexpectedly, her eyes filled with tears. "Please come in," she invited, opening the door wider. Henry followed her into a modestly furnished but clean and organized living room. On the walls, family photos. In one of them, the woman next to a young man, both smiling. "My name is Helen Sullivan," she introduced herself, indicating the sofa for Henry to sit. "And I have much to thank you for." "Your letters intrigued me," confessed Henry. "Always so brief, so mysterious." Helen nodded, sitting in a nearby armchair. "I was never good with words, especially after everything that happened. The letters were my way of thanking without exposing myself too much." "You mentioned a son," continued Henry, looking at the photo on the wall. "Is that him?" Helen followed his gaze and smiled sadly. "Yes, Gabriel. He was 17 when he left home after a terrible fight. He said I didn't understand him, that nobody really cared. For almost a year I had no news. I didn't know if he was alive or if something worse had happened." Her voice faltered slightly, but she took a deep breath and continued. "Then one day he saw that video. You at the supermarket with the girl, talking about seeing people, about social responsibility. Something in that touched Gabriel deeply." Helen stood up and took an object from a nearby shelf, a cell phone. "He called me that same night. He was at a bus station in Eugene, Oregon. He said he wanted to come back, that he realized he had been unfair to me, that he felt that if even a busy businessman could stop to see an unknown child, perhaps he too could be seen, be understood." Henry felt a lump in his throat. "And did he come back?" Helen smiled, now with tears freely flowing down her face. "Yes, he's working during the day and studying at night to make up for the time lost at school. He dreams of going to college for social work." At that moment, the sound of a key in the door was heard. Helen quickly wiped away her tears. That must be him arriving. The door opened and a tall young man of tired appearance but with lively eyes entered the living room. He stopped abruptly upon seeing Henry, recognizing him instantly. "Mom?" he asked, confused. "Gabriel, this is Mr. Henry Walters," introduced Helen. "He received my letters and came to meet us." The young man remained paralyzed for a few seconds, as if not believing what he was seeing. Then slowly he walked to Henry and extended his hand. "You have no idea what you did for me," he said with a choked voice. "For us." Henry shook the young man's hand, feeling that this encounter somehow closed a circle that had begun on that ordinary morning at checkout counter 2 of Fairmart. "Actually," he replied, "I think it was you who did something incredible for me, Gabriel. You and your mother showed me that sometimes a small gesture can trigger transformations we could never have imagined possible." Saturday dawned sunny in Seattle, as if the sky itself wanted to celebrate the inauguration of the Fairmart Foundation for the future headquarters. At the Hope Renewed shelter in Portland, the excitement had begun early. Lily, dressed in a light blue dress, her favorite color, was helping Tommy tie the bow tie that was part of the outfit they had received especially for the occasion. "Stay still, Tommy," she asked, adjusting the small accessory on her brother's neck. "I can't do it right like this." "It's tight, Lily," complained the boy, moving restlessly. "And it itches." "It's just for the ceremony," she explained. with the patience of someone who had lived much more than her 9 years. "Afterward you can take it off. Mr. Henry will like to see you all elegant." The simple mention of Henry's name made Tommy stop moving. In recent months, the businessman had become a kind of hero for the boy, who kept newspaper and magazine clippings with reports about the bread and milk man, as he used to call him. "Do you think he'll remember us?" asked Tommy, suddenly insecure. Lily smiled, finishing the bow. "Of course he will. It was because of us that he started all this, remember?" Outside the room, Mrs. Jenkins was waiting, also dressed in special clothes for the occasion, a navy blue skirt and blazer, set that a department store had donated upon learning she would accompany the children to the ceremony. "Are you ready, children?" she called, checking her watch. "The car should be arriving." In a few minutes, Lily, Tommy, and Mrs. Jenkins were in the entrance hall of the shelter, waiting for the promised transportation. To their surprise, it wasn't a regular car that parked in front of the gate, but a shiny black limousine. "It's a real limousine," exclaimed Tommy, running to the window to see better. "Just like in the movies." A uniformed driver got out of the vehicle and walked to the gate. "Good morning. I've come to pick up Mrs. Jenkins and the children Lily and Tommy, at the request of Mr. Henry Walters." Mrs. Jenkins, as impressed as the children, just nodded, leading Lily and Tommy to the luxurious vehicle. Inside the limousine, a basket with fruits, juices, and chocolates awaited them, along with a handwritten note. "To sweeten the journey of my special guests. I can hardly wait to see you, Henry." Meanwhile, at the Foundation's headquarters, Henry was supervising the final preparations for the ceremony. The space, decorated with elegant simplicity, was full of people, business people, journalists, NGO representatives, politicians, and celebrities who had embraced the cause. "Everything is perfect. Marianne," he praised, observing the environment, especially the exhibition. On the walls of the main hall, a photographic exhibition told the story of the bread and milk program and its developments. The first photo, larger than the others, showed the exact moment when Henry announced the initiative on the Fairmart microphone, with Lily in the background, holding her grocery bag. The following images documented the impacts: children receiving food in the stores, shelters being renovated, schools receiving new equipment. "The photographers did an incredible job," commented Marianne, "especially the photo essay at the Hope Renewed shelter." Henry smiled, pausing on a particularly touching photo. Lily and Tommy playing in the new playground built in the shelter's yard, with genuine smiles that strongly contrasted with the apprehensive expression Lily had that first morning at the supermarket. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket. It was a message from Helen Sullivan. "Gabriel and I have arrived. We're looking forward to the ceremony." After meeting Helen and Gabriel the previous week, Henry had personally invited them to the inauguration. It was important to him that all the people who were part of that story be present at that symbolic moment. "Has the board arrived yet?" he asked Marianne. "Yes, they're in the VIP room. Richard Mitchell asked to speak with you before the ceremony." Henry nodded, heading to the reserved room. He found Richard talking with other board members, all in formal attire, holding glasses of champagne. "Henry!" greeted Richard, approaching with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Impressive what you managed to organize in such a short time." "Thank you, Richard. I had an exceptional team working on this." Richard led Henry to a more private corner of the room. "Before the ceremony begins, we need to discuss a matter," he said, lowering his voice. "The board is concerned about the proportion that all this has taken. The media exposure, the growing costs, your personal involvement." Henry frowned. "I thought this matter was already resolved. The numbers clearly show that the initiative has brought more benefits than costs to the company." "Yes, in the short term," conceded Richard. "But we're talking about long-term sustainability. We want to propose some adjustments." "What kind of adjustments?" "Basically, limiting the scope of the program. Perhaps restricting it to 1 day a week, or establishing monthly quotas per store. Something more controlled, more measurable." Henry felt a pang of frustration. It was always the same discussion, the same concerns disguised as business prudence. "Richard, did you visit the shelter as I suggested?" The other man looked away, visibly uncomfortable. "I haven't had the opportunity yet, but then I suggest you do that before proposing any adjustments," interrupted Henry, keeping his voice calm but firm. In fact, I invite you to accompany me today. I have 2 special guests arriving that you need to meet." At that moment, Marianne entered the room, approaching discreetly. "Mr. Walters, Lily and Tommy have just arrived." Henry's face lit up instantly. "Ask them to be escorted here." "Please." Richard observed the change in Henry's expression with curiosity. "Are those the children from the video?" he asked. "Yes, Lily and her brother Tommy, the true protagonists of this story." Minutes later, the door opened again and Marianne entered, accompanied by Lily, Tommy, and Mrs. Jenkins. The children paused for a moment, intimidated by the sophisticated environment and the unfamiliar people. Henry walked over to them, opening a genuine smile. Lily. "Tommy, so good to see you." Upon recognizing Henry, Tommy let go of Mrs. Jenkins' hand and ran toward the businessman. "Mr. Henry, we came in a limousine." Henry crouched to be at the boy's height and hugged him. "I heard. And it looks like you enjoyed it, huh?" "It was amazing. There was even chocolate inside." Lily approached more timidly, observing her brother's interaction with Henry, despite months of indirect contact through occasional visits from Foundation representatives to the shelter and gifts sent. There was still a certain reserve in her posture. "Hello." "Lily," greeted Henry, extending his hand to her. "You look beautiful in that dress." The girl smiled, finally relaxing a bit. "Thank you for inviting us, Mr. Henry. I'm the one who should thank you for coming. After all, none of this would exist without you." Richard, who was observing the scene from a distance, approached with an intrigued expression. "Henry, aren't you going to introduce us?" he asked, looking at the children with a rehearsed smile. "Of course. Richard, these are Lily and Tommy from the Hope Renewed shelter in Portland. And this is Mrs. Jenkins, the shelter's coordinator. Everyone, this is Richard Mitchell, a member of the Fairmart board." Lily politely extended her hand to Richard, who shook it with a displaced formality. "It's a pleasure to meet you all," he said mechanically. At that moment, Henry noticed Helen and Gabriel standing at the door of the room, observing timidly. He gestured for them to approach. "And these are Helen and Gabriel Sullivan," he introduced, when mother and son joined the group. "They're also an important part of this story." Richard seemed increasingly confused, clearly trying to understand the connection between all those people. "Helen is the author of the mysterious letters I mentioned," explained Henry, perceiving his colleague's confusion. "And Gabriel? Well, Gabriel is living proof of how a small gesture can trigger unexpected transformations." Before Richard could question, Marianne approached again. "Mr. Walters, it's time for the ceremony." Henry nodded and addressed Lily and Tommy. "Are you ready to help me cut the ribbon?" The children's eyes sparkled with excitement. Tommy proudly adjusted his bow tie, while Lily nervously smoothed her dress. "Yes," they answered in unison. Henry offered a hand to each child and walked toward the main hall, where hundreds of people were waiting for the ceremony to begin. Richard, Helen, Gabriel, and Mrs. Jenkins followed them, forming a curious procession. As they entered the hall, a murmur ran through the crowd. Flashes fired, capturing the image of Henry Walters hand in hand with the 2 children who had inspired that entire movement. On the stage, a large red ribbon was stretched in front of a panel with the Foundation's logo. Henry guided Lily and Tommy there and picked up a microphone. "Good morning, everyone," he began, looking at the diverse audience. "Today is a special day, not just for me or for Fairmart, but for all people who believe that we can and should make a difference in the world around us." The audience listened attentively, in absolute silence. "A few months ago, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, I had the privilege of meeting these 2 extraordinary children," he continued, indicating Lily and Tommy. What began as a simple gesture, helping Lily buy bread and milk for breakfast, ended up triggering a series of events that brought us here today. Henry paused, looking at Helen and Gabriel, who were in the front row. "In the process, I discovered something profoundly true. Sometimes, the most important people are precisely those we overlook every day. Those who are in supermarket lines counting coins. Those who live in shelters trying to rebuild their lives. Those who write anonymous letters because they're afraid to expose themselves." His eyes scanned the audience, detecting emotional expressions on various faces. The Fairmart Foundation for the Future is born today with a simple but ambitious mission: to make visible what our eyes often don't want or can't see. Not for lack of light, but for lack of a truly attentive gaze. Henry made another pause and then crouched down to be at Lily and Tommy's height. "Would you like to say something?" he asked, offering the microphone. Lily hesitated, looking at the intimidating crowd. Then, taking a deep breath, she took the microphone with slightly trembling hands. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said with a soft but firm voice. "Before I thought nobody saw us, that we were invisible to everyone. Now I know that's not true. There are a lot of good people in the world. We just need to find each other." The simplicity and depth of the girl's words had a visible impact on the audience. Some people discreetly wiped away tears. Tommy, encouraged by his sister, took the microphone next. "Thank you for the bread and milk, Mr. Henry, and for the new books, and for the playground, and for today's limousine." A wave of affectionate laughter ran through the hall, breaking the emotional intensity of the previous moment. Henry took back the microphone, smiling. "That's why we're here today. Not just to inaugurate a physical space, but to celebrate the beginning of a movement that, we hope, will inspire other companies, other people to see beyond the obvious, beyond the immediate." He gestured for an assistant to approach with a large ceremonial scissor. "And now, with the help of my friends Lily and Tommy, I officially declare the headquarters of the Fairmont Foundation for the Future inaugurated." The children held the scissor along with Henry, and in a coordinated movement cut the red ribbon. Enthusiastic applause filled the environment, while more flashes fired, immortalizing the moment. The ceremony continued with speeches from representatives of partner NGOs, cultural presentations, and the official announcement of the first projects that would be supported by the foundation. Lily, Tommy, and Mrs. Jenkins followed everything from places of honor in the front row, alongside Helen and Gabriel. At one point, Richard approached Henry, who was observing the children interacting animatedly with other guests. "You know, Henry," he began with a different tone than usual. "I think I understand better now." "What exactly?" asked Henry, curious. "The why of all this. It's not just about corporate social responsibility or cause marketing. It's about humanity, something that perhaps we've lost a bit in the business world." Henry smiled, surprised by his colleague's change of perspective. "Exactly. And the most interesting thing is that we don't need to choose between doing good and doing good business. We can and should do both." Richard nodded, thoughtful. "I'll withdraw my proposal for adjustments. In fact, I'm thinking of suggesting to the board an increase in the foundation's budget for next year." Henry extended his hand to Richard, who shook it firmly, sealing a new understanding between them. The celebration continued until early afternoon. When it finally began to disperse, Henry found Lily sitting alone in a corner of the hall, observing the photographic exhibition. "Is everything okay?" he asked, sitting next to her. Lily nodded, without taking her eyes off a particular photo, the first in the exhibition, which showed the moment of the announcement at the supermarket. "It's strange to see all this," she commented. "It seems like it happened so long ago. 4 months can seem like an eternity when so many things change, right?" Lily turned her eyes to Henry. "Do you think things will continue like this? I mean, will people continue to care about children like me and Tommy?" The question, so direct and so profound, caught Henry by surprise. There was a wisdom in it beyond Lily's 9 years, perhaps born from the difficult experiences she had faced so early in life. "I'd like to be able to promise that, yes," he replied honestly. "But the truth is that the world is complicated. Lily, people sometimes forget, get distracted, go back to looking only at their own lives." The girl's expression became slightly disappointed. "But," continued Henry, "that's why places like this exist now, to constantly remind us to look beyond ourselves. And as long as I'm here, I promise I won't forget. I won't stop trying to make a difference." Lily smiled, seeming satisfied with the response. "Thank you for not lying to me," she said. "Many adults lie to children, you know. They think we don't understand things." Henry laughed softly. "You understand more than many adults I know." "Lily." At that moment, Tommy came running toward them, holding a small object in his hands. "Lily, Mr. Henry, look what I got!" he exclaimed, showing a pin with the foundation's logo. "That's cool, Tommy," replied Lily, examining the brooch. "It looks nice." Tommy extended his closed hand to Henry. I brought one for you too. Henry took the pin, genuinely touched by the gesture. Thank you. Tommy, I'll wear it with great pride. The boy smiled, satisfied, and sat next to his sister. The three remained in silence for a few moments, observing the movement of people still circulating through the hall. And now? Asked Lily finally. Now, replied Henry, we continue. One day at a time, one person at a time, doing what we can to make the world a little better. What do you think? I think that's good, said Tommy, swinging his legs that barely reached the floor.